Loss comes in many forms, and usually in unexpected ways. It can be devastating, leaving you facing an uphill struggle to go on with life without someone you thought would always be there. But life does go on, and even in the deepest despair, we can find hope. Welcome to Grief Relief with your hosts, Drs. Gloria and Heidi Horsley, brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. And now here's Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley with my co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
We're really happy to have you watch our show today, and we're going to be talking about diversity. Don't you wonder sometimes, why don't you grieve like I do, or my husband should be grieving differently, or my spouse should, or somebody should be? And we want to talk today a little bit about there is some diversity in grief, and it has to do with a lot of different issues. And we're going to have some wonderful guests today. We're going to have Donna Lee Maris, and we are going to have Capathia Jenkins, and she works with Covenant House and is a singer and actress, right, Heidi?
Absolutely, she's a Broadway star.
Yeah, she's a Broadway star, and we're going to have Amber Iman on, and she's also a Broadway star, right?
Yes, and they have fabulous voices.
And Amber's going to be singing on our show, Do I Ask Too Much? And it's from the musical Harriet. And the musical was written by a brother-sister team, Colette and Michael Call.
I did, and I actually saw Amber and Capathia sing in Harriet Tubman, and it was extremely powerful and moving.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that, because I know,
Yeah.
and talk about someone who has a history of grief, loss, and recovery, and is a hero in the lives of many people. It would be Harriet Tubman, right, Heidi?
Absolutely. She had loss after loss after loss. And despite it all, she found hope, and she remained strong, and she was true to her cause.
Yeah, and those are the kind of heroes we need in our lives. So I hope that you'll enjoy it today, and Heidi's going to introduce another hero in our lives.
Yes, our friend Donna Lee Maris is here with us today, and Donna Lee is no stranger to grief and loss. He has a private practice which is just 4 blocks from the World Trade Center. He's worked with people around grief and loss for over 20 years. He is the chair for the Multicultural Committee for ADAC, which is the Association for Deaf Educators and Counselors. Welcome to our show, Donna Lee.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on, Donna Lee, and I last saw you at ADAC, the Association of Deaf Educators. And we're very excited about the work you're doing. Could you talk a little bit about the multicultural things and the work you do?
Well, as chair of the Persons of Color Multicultural Committee with ADAC, what we're basically doing is bringing in all the different faces of people who are working with people who are dying and who are surviving the loss of loved ones. And that's allowed us to reach out to people or professionals from medical doctors to nurses to social workers, through psychologists and case managers from all over the world. We have members who are from South Africa, from Nigeria, Jamaica, Nicaragua, all the places that we've never had connections with before. Now ADAC, with its growing membership, is allowing all those professionals to come in every year to gather with us and have conversations about rituals and cultures and ways in which people actually grieve the loss of loved ones, which are different from American way of grieving.
Yeah, that's so important, because don't we get in this mindset that there's one way to grieve and we should be doing it this way, and if we could only get it right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Even here in New York City, there is such a variety of people and a variety of ways people actually grieve the loss of loved ones. And it depends on who that loved one who died. If that person is 6 years old compared to 90 years old, the way you grieve that individual is completely different. And the gender is another factor. Sexual orientation, religious background, educational background. I think part of the thing that I'm experiencing and enjoying the work that I do is, what is the relationship of the person who survived the disease? Is that relationship something that we can talk about and work with in the process of actually making you a better person and you transitioning into a life that without that individual?
So Donna Lee, I just wanted to ask you something and backtrack a little bit. How did you get interested in this field?
My mother is a nurse. And when I was 8 years old, I saw my mother and my two aunts actually dress my grandmother who died. She had leukemia, and after she died, my mother in her my grandmother's bedroom actually dressed my grandmother. And seeing that as an 8-year-old boy, that never comes out of your mind. And since then, I've had this comfort level with the dying process. And for many years, I've heard stories and wanted to know more. And when you inject culture into that equation, you have a world of wonders.
You know, it's so interesting that you're talking about this, because there's so many people now who say, oh, I wouldn't want to see him like that. I mean, but it's not like that.
Absolutely.
It's a whole process. Because I know my grandmother laid in her coffin in her house, and we were there, and we got up in the morning and saw her, and you know. And it was a beautiful thing, because you were able to actually deal with it. Talk about a little bit what you're doing with Broadway, too. And
well, the reason why I started HIV Arts Network is because in the early 80s and throughout the 90s, a lot of artists, fine artists, dancers, musicians, graphic designers, all of the fine arts and performing arts community, because of the stigma attached to the disease, they did not have families to work with, and they did not have support that they needed during their dying process and surviving lost loved ones. And if you remember early on in this epidemic, one person would have fever on a Tuesday, and next time you know, they're dead on a Friday. Right. And that has changed a great deal since then, 30 years later. But there's still this perception that people who are HIV positive are people who we should distance ourselves from. There was an article from op-ed article from Elton John last week about how, yes, we're talking about Ebola and other diseases in the world, but we haven't really talked about HIV for a long time. There are still people getting infected and dying from this disease.
Which is a huge problem, particularly out of the United States, I know that.
Absolutely. And in New York City, we don't realize that the highest rate of HIV infection these days are the young ones, 18 to 24. Wow. Why are they getting infected? Because they did not see the death that was so frequent in the early stages of this epidemic. 80s and 90s, it's not unusual for you to be walking through the streets of New York City and you can pinpoint pretty much who has HIV. And you might see them today, a month later, they're gone.
So how would people get a hold of you? If they're around in this
Well,
area?
HIV Arts Network, we have a website.
HIV Arts Network.
Right.
Okay,
right,
great.
right.
And you have a website?
Yes, yes.
And they can email you there?
Absolutely.
That's great. Now talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing with the Death Educators Association. They're having a conference, right?
We're having a conference in San Antonio, Texas in April of 2015, and the focus is on diversity, interestingly enough. And the work that we're going to be doing is basically talking about culture. If you're from Nigeria, how do men and women grieve? How different do they grieve? Because we know that gender has a big difference when it comes to the grieving process. There's stereotypes about men not grieving, not expressing their grief, but in other parts of the world, the men are more expressive in the way that they grieve than women.
So that's not necessarily true in other parts of the world.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Have you seen rituals that you found particularly helpful after a loss?
It's interesting that in this country, we don't see the body once it's dead. If the person dies in a hospital, that body goes to a funeral home or somewhere else. In other parts of the world, the body is in the living room.
Right.
And everybody can say goodbye, and there's no fear. Death anxiety is something that is American in nature. Other parts of the world, they welcome the fact that they still can connect, touch the person who died.
I like that idea of being able to say goodbye and having somebody in your home to say goodbye to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It just amazes me that people don't want to see the body. It really does. I mean, because I think one of the things that happens when you see the body is that it's seen as believing.
Right.
And it does, I think, help to
There's a
move this.
finality when
Yeah.
you see, okay, this person is dead. What do I
Yeah.
do? And that's the work that I do with bereavement counseling in my private practice. Okay, you saw the body. It's the person is dead. The person you love one is dead. How do you move forward with that?
All right. Well, I know we've got a roll-in that we're going to show right now with Andy Ho. And I know you
Great.
know Andy. He's from ADAC, and I interviewed him at ADAC last year, and it is, he's with Hong Kong University, and it's talking about the Chinese reaction to grief and loss. So let's watch that, and thank you so much for being on the show today, and we're going to look forward to seeing you at ADAC.
Thanks, Doneley.
Thank you.
Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley, president of the Open to Hope Foundation, and I'm here today with Dr. Andy Ho.
There's a heavy traditional taboo on death and dying in the Chinese context because we often relate death and dying with that bad luck. We avoid cemeteries. We don't have 4 floors in our buildings because in the Chinese language, 4 sounds exactly like death. We see a funeral car at the end of the road and we walk the other direction. I think the curtain between life and death, curtain it's easily removable because we're so afraid of death in a sense, but we're also very connected to it because we worship our ancestors. In more recent years, we have done a lot of research looking at how older people feel death and dying in Hong Kong, the Chinese context, and we discovered that older people do they're actually very open to talking about death and dying. The middle-aged generation, they're much less willing to talk about this because they think if I talk to an older person about death and dying, it would accelerate the death. What we found the phenomenon is older patients want to talk about death and dying. They want to make an end-of-life care decision. They want to make advanced care planning. But when they open this up and talk to their adult children, they can't get this across. I think over the past decade, there has been a lot of life and death education in the community that really opens up people's eyes and opens up the mind towards what life and death is really about. And I think the continuation of that public education process is important. I think we have to start education from not just the elderly perspective, start from a very young age. One thing that's really important that has been happening is the transformation of the education system. And we have a 1-year foundational year. And that foundational year, we're able to implement life and death education into the university context. And I think we have to expand that education into the elementary school, into high school, so children from a very young age can get a wide spectrum of what life and death is. A lot of charitable organizations are starting to build hospices in China, which has been a very neglected area of development in the past. But I think over the past 5-6 years or so, it's becoming much more prominent, and people are getting help that they need.
Welcome to the show, Capathia and Amber.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you guys here, and I saw you both in Harriet Tubman at the New York Musical Theater Festival. You were fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The energy in that room was incredible, and the voices were absolutely amazing, and it was such a powerful story of love and loss and family and how close we are, and I really resonated with the song about Harriet and when she had to say goodbye to her sister forever. I mean, given that I lost a brother traumatically and suddenly in an accident, I identified with that piece.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful, the two of you together saying your final goodbyes.
I'm sorry, I missed out. Darn it, because actually it was my cousin that wrote it.
That's right, Colette.
Colette
Yeah,
Call,
yeah.
and well, let's see, what's her last name now? I forget because she just got married.
She sure
Colette
did.
Call Lofgren, and then her brother Michael Call. So
Yeah.
very exciting. Well, we're excited that you guys have been willing to come on the show today, and we want to talk a little bit about this story of Harriet. Is really a story about loss and recovery, isn't it? In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways it is. I mean, it's a historical piece because Harriet Tubman is really one of those sort of giants in African-American history, right? She was Moses, and she ran the Underground Railroad and helped to get so many of the enslaved out and up north, right? But what's so great about Colette and Michael's story is that you get to know about Harriet the person, right? So she's born, she's enslaved, and the relationship that she has with her family. And when her sister, I play her sister Lina, and Amber played Harriet, when her sister gets sold away, like, what is that like, right? You have a family member and you're never gonna see them again, right? So that was the song that we did, but you get to watch Harriet grow up, fall in love, all the things that you don't necessarily associate with her because it was such a horrible time in our history, right, with her being a slave and having to get out and all of that. But the way that they tell the story, it lets you inside of Harriet, the human being, right, with all of her emotions, all the love, all the loss, all the death that she encounters, you know, on her journey. So, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful story and really universal for us because we all grow up and love and lose and all that stuff. So,
and the thing about her, which was so incredible, was she had all this loss, but through it all, she was able to go through so much adversity and yet remain so strong and so connected to her cause, and she didn't lose hope.
And that's, I think, playing Harriet, I think that was something that empowered me because there's the side of loss that's, you know, loss and grief and recovery, but then there's also how loss can empower you. She fell in love with this man, married him, and he was having a relationship with another woman on the side. And, you know, he threatened to turn her in because she was taking these people north, and she said, no, you know, that's fine, you live your life here, you know what, this is gonna empower me to keep doing what I'm doing. And I experienced that in my personal life, how loss, you have your moment of grief and you have your moment where you can't see the light and you're lost. And then at the other side of it is empowerment and hope. And I think that's the part of this story of Harriet that really touched me and I really hadn't thought about is how much she went through and then how much, like, she took that energy and she said, you know what, I'm gonna turn this into something good. And that, I think that's one of the most beautiful pieces that I took away from this show.
And I think sometimes when we're in grief, I know early on when my brother died, I was in such a bad place that not only did I not know how I was going to survive, I honestly didn't believe I wanted to. And I needed to see people like Harriet that were further along in their journey to hold on to them.
Absolutely.
They needed to be my lifeline. So I thought, okay, if they could survive, people, stories like that, women like that could survive, I can do it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, these hero stories are really important to inspire us in our life, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, did it bring up anything for you in any of the songs that you sung or anything together of your past and loss? Did you find some inspiration in her?
I mean, I definitely found inspiration in Lina. You know, one of the things that really sort of tugged at my heartstrings in learning this song, We Will Never Be Apart, is there's a verse where she talks about her children and that she's being sold away and she'll never see her children again. She won't get to see them grow up, never see their smiles again, right? I don't have children, but I have like a host of nieces and nephews, and I just put myself, their little faces in my brain, you know, just trying to put myself in a place where I couldn't imagine never seeing them again or never seeing them grow up or never, you know, putting them in a timeout because they have been naughty with their cousins or, you know what I mean? Just to imagine that you would never have that experience was really something that just saying the words, the tears would roll down my face every time we did it. Just really a powerful thing if you let yourself think about never seeing somebody again. It's visceral, you know? Yeah.
And you're going to be singing at the end of the show, Do I Ask Too Much? Can you talk a little bit about that song?
That song comes from, and this is something I didn't realize until this moment, that I've also experienced in my life, being a woman on a career path and with a mission. And you look back sometimes and I realize, wow, I haven't really stopped to have a personal life, to live in this moment. I'm so busy worried about the next job and what's coming next. And when you look at Harriet, her mission was, I have to save my people. I have to get my family north. I have to come back and get everybody who's enslaved, everybody's who's going through something, anything. She's worried about them, and she never realized, what about me? You know, maybe I'm not asking enough of myself. Maybe I'm not asking enough of my family. And these men who have tried to love her, you know, they were men who wanted to be in her life, and she said, I don't have time for that. I gotta go. I'm about a mission. I have a plan and a purpose. And I realize that sometimes I'm like, I gotta stop. I gotta slow down. I have to slow down and be in this moment and allow myself to feel all of these things and experience all of these things and love and life. There's room for everything. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes we just start going and we don't stop and we don't look around and we don't allow ourselves to breathe and feel. And it's every time I sing that song, I have to remind myself, okay, Amber, slow down.
I love that song. It's so amazing. Well, we're going to get to hear it now. And we want to thank you, too, for being on the show.
Thank you guys for having us.
And we want to thank all of our guests for being on the show. And we want to thank you for watching our show today. And we hope you'll visit us at opentohope.com and keep the hope up. Right, Heidi?
Yes, we are blessed to have you guys here. Keep fighting the good fight and keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're
Thank you.
really gifted. You've got a calling.
Thank you for having us.
And now we're going to hear our song on Do I Ask Too Much?
Is this how love feels? Is this what it means to be free? Never dreamed this would happen to me. Have I been so careless? How could I not see that I would lose him? God, have I lost him? Driven by this desperate yearning to be free, I never thought he would simply forget me. Maybe I ask too much. Maybe I go too far. Maybe I'm crazy to imagine things so different than they are. Boldly I chase my dreams, only to find I'm the fool. So maybe they were right. I ask too much. All my life they told me, you are just a slave. Keep your head down, child. Swallow your pride, child. But I swore chains would never hold me or make me grovel and behave. Look at the cost now. Look what I've lost now. Maybe I ask too much. Maybe I go too far. Maybe it's only fools who dream of things so different than they are. And those who reach to the sky find there's a long way too far. So maybe they were right. Maybe they were right. Maybe they were right. I ask too much. All my life they told me, you are just a slave. Thank you.